Now what I'd like to do is a very quick rundown of the curriculum. I just want to highlight some of the really important videos, the things that I feel are highlights, or I think that you shouldn't miss. So first up is a video in this intro section. It's a very short section, but the last video is a super fast intro to Bitcoin where we just quickly overview how Bitcoin works and sort of the big ideas behind it. I definitely recommend watching that. Then we move on to a section all about money. And this kind of steps back from Bitcoin. It's really focused on the history of money and currencies, types of currencies, and other attempts at digital currencies and cryptocurrencies that predate Bitcoin. And it sets the stage for Bitcoin. But in there, we have a couple videos about creating our own fictional coin or currency called Rainbow Coin. I recommend you check those out because it helps us really understand the problems that Bitcoin solves. Then we move into Bitcoin. So we have a Bitcoin basics section, and this is where we actually show in one of the videos a real transaction. Kevin sends me a very tiny amount of Bitcoin, like $8 or something. But we actually show it on the screen, show our phones, and you can watch it live. Well, not live. You can watch it happen. Then we move on to cryptography and fingerprinting. So this is a bit of a shift in the course. After Intro to Bitcoin, we focus on cryptography in general and a technology called fingerprinting. And then we learn how it applies to Bitcoin, where we talk about blocks and the blockchain. So this is another very important section, and we have some nice slides that we're pretty proud of in this section. It's nice colors. Definitely recommend not skipping that as well. Then we move into mining, the mechanics of Bitcoin mining. We talk a little bit about some math in this section. We talk about what Bitcoin miners are doing. If you've never heard of miners, don't worry. And then in our very uncreatively titled second section on mining, more about mining, we just expand on some of the details and implications that stem from how Bitcoin mining works. Next, we go back to cryptography, but in a different way. We talk about something called public key cryptography. And we learn this on its own in isolation. Then we come back and learn how it relates to Bitcoin. It has to do with something called digital signing. So in these two sections, we do a lot of demonstrations. We actually show the cryptography. We don't skim over that. So for some of you, I think that will be exciting. Then we move on to Ethereum, which is a second cryptocurrency, separate from Bitcoin. Similar in some ways, but very different in others. And in this section, we spend a lot of time really talking about how Ethereum is unique and special. And then we also have a couple of transaction videos where Kevin sends me Ethereum, and also a video where I use Ethereum to purchase something called a CryptoKitty. Next, we have another very uncreatively titled section called More About Ethereum, where we expand on some of the inner workings of how it all works. And there's a lot of fun things there. Then we get to the appendix. And this section includes a lot of one-off videos that go into more detail that we didn't want to include in the regular part of the course. Very detailed things or more math-heavy videos, or very nuanced things that you don't really have to know. They're all in this section. So multiple times in the course, you'll see annotations pop up, or you might hear us say, for more information, watch this video in the appendix. So that's the appendix. And then finally, we have a video or a section at the very end called Getting Started, which I guess seems sort of paradoxical, but it's about getting started with Bitcoin and Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies, meaning the very concrete steps of if you want to get started, if you want to buy some, what do you need to do? What apps can you download? What exchanges can you look to? So the beginning of the course, most of the course is about how things work. We're not trying to get you buying or investing things right away. That's not really the focus or the goal of this course. It's a lot more about explaining how it all works. So that's a brief overview of what we cover. Next, we're going to dive into that super quick intro to Bitcoin video. All right, welcome back. So in this course, we start off by talking about decidedly non-Bitcoin specific topics. That's a terrible way of putting it. We talk about the history of money. We talk about types of currencies and digital money and basically precursors to Bitcoin. And we think it's important enough that we do that early on. But the trade-off is that we don't quite get to the meat of Bitcoin. We don't get to Bitcoin itself for at least a couple videos. And this course isn't terribly long, so it's not that long of a wait, but we decided why not put a super short analogy, a very quick introduction to how Bitcoin or a single Bitcoin transaction works in like 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. Don't hold us to it, but we're gonna try. So here we go. Okay, this is such a terrible slide if you have no context. It looks like we're talking about the company Dropbox, which we're not. There is an actual item in the world called a Dropbox.
Yeah, where you return videotapes, sort of like a mailbox.
Yeah, stuff goes in. Anybody can put something in there. Anybody can go to the library, put a book in, but only the librarian. There we
Library
go.
master.
The library master can unlock that box and take all the books out. It's a one-way system. So why do we have this here?
What's this have to do with Bitcoin? Suppose I'm going to send Colt some Bitcoin. What Colt is going to do is he's going to use an app on his phone to create a disposable Dropbox for me.
Okay, and what is it actually called in Bitcoin?
It's called an address, and that's really just a destination for me to send Bitcoin.
It's like if he was sending me a letter, he needs a place to send it to.
Yeah.
In this case, though, it's a really long string of numbers and letters that's impossible to remember.
So instead, it's pictured here as a QR code, and many Bitcoin applications use QR codes as a convenience layer on top of the underlying address.
Okay, so I make these, and here I actually have 3 of them because Kevin's going to send me Bitcoin. My mom's sending me Bitcoin, and my dog is sending me Bitcoin. And they each have a special place to send it to. Now, along with it, we have a key pictured. And that's because a lockbox or Dropbox like this is useless if nobody can get anything out of there.
Or if everybody can get it out of there. Yeah.
Or the opposite. But in our case, anyone can put something in, but only I, the creator who has the key, can unlock it. I basically tell Kevin, here's where I want you to send the Bitcoin to. Kevin's going to send me 10 million Bitcoin.
I'm going to send you 10 Bitcoin. 10 million would be half of all of the Bitcoin. I'll send you 10 Bitcoin.
I'm happy with 10 Bitcoin.
That's very generous.
That's still quite a bit of money today.
So I put the Bitcoin, we'll explain what this process is mathematically on a computer, but for the analogy, just imagine that there's an operation I can do where I put digital Bitcoin into this Dropbox. And as soon as it's in there, it's locked in place. I can't get it out.
Right.
Now, the next step and the next leap of understanding that you have to try and take before you'll have to take our word for it.
Yeah, this is the weirdest part.
Yeah, is that instead of me walking that Dropbox to Colt and saying, here's your Bitcoin, what I instead do is I take that locked Dropbox and put it in the middle of a public place. And that public place is called the blockchain.
It's a pile of a bunch of other transactions, a bunch of these other locked boxes that somebody has a key to each one. The idea is that they're all out. Everybody can see them. So everybody knows. So they don't actually, we'll get into this. It's anonymous. It doesn't show who sent what to who. But everybody knows that there's a transaction from one person to another person for 10 Bitcoin that happened at X time in the day.
Yeah. So imagine I put this Bitcoin into this Dropbox, and then by putting it in the blockchain, what I'm effectively doing is I'm leaving it in a public place. And it's as if I've taken this Dropbox and just left it in front of City Hall. But I'm confident that only Colt will be the one who can open this Dropbox. Nobody else can steal the Bitcoin inside of it.
So we'll get into the reasons why this is so important that it works this way. There are a lot of benefits of doing it, of having transactions be public like this. And actually, it's sort of necessitated by the way Bitcoin works. But we'll get there, and we spend a lot of time talking about the blockchain.
So when Colt wants to spend his Bitcoin, what he does is he goes to City Hall, he goes to the blockchain, where all the Dropboxes are stored, and he picks up the Dropbox that he knows he created.
And I have my key at home.
He has his key.
I'm the only person who has it. And I go and I unlock it, and I get my 10 Bitcoin, and I can spend them. I can exchange them for US dollars somewhere. I can do whatever I want.
And he can send them to the next person.
So to summarize, at the core of Bitcoin, there are 2 concepts really. One is this idea of a one-way transaction, what we're calling a Dropbox. In reality, it's called an address. Bitcoin can go in, but only one person can take it out. So everybody can put something into there. Only one person can take it out.
So the second component is the notion of leaving that Dropbox in a public place. Instead of me manually delivering it to Colt and needing to see him in person or directly send him, for example, an email with the Bitcoin, I just leave that Dropbox in a public place. And I'm confident, and Colt is confident, that when he wants to spend that Bitcoin that's locked in that box, only he will be able to unlock it.
And now we're done. That's it.
Voila.